Shea Weber played the 2021 Stanley Cup Final on a torn meniscus, a broken ankle, torn thumb tendons, and a groin he tore mid-series. That was the last hockey game he would ever play. His body was done at 35, but the $110 million contract kept moving for 5 more years, passed between 3 teams who never expected him back. The town he comes from has 3,000 people, and that number includes the surrounding area. Sicamous, British Columbia sits between 2 lakes on the Trans-Canada Highway, the kind of place where everyone knows your parents before they know you, and his parents were a hairdresser and a sawmill worker. His mother, Tracy, cut hair. His father, James, worked lumber. There was no trust fund underneath Shea Weber, no private skating coach, no youth hockey factory designed to push a kid toward the draft. He played organized hockey starting at age 6 with the local minor hockey association, switched between forward and defense depending on what the team needed, and didn't settle on the blue line permanently until his 2nd year of Bantam, when his father told him he'd have a better shot at a pro career if he played defense. He went unselected in his WHL Bantam draft year, which tells you how far off the radar he was. The Kelowna Rockets put him on their protected list anyway. By the time he finished 4 seasons with them, he had 2 WHL championships, a Memorial Cup in 2004, and a WHL playoff MVP in 2005 after coming back from a knee injury to put up 9 goals and 17 points in 18 postseason games. He married Bailey Monroe, who he met while playing junior in Kelowna. No flash, no noise, just a kid from a mill town who kept showing up until the showing up turned into something nobody could ignore. Nashville drafted him 49th overall in 2003. 2nd round, which is low enough that most fans don't remember the pick happening. His NHL debut came on January 6, 2006 against Detroit, and he recorded 3 shots on goal in just over 11 minutes of ice time. Within a few years, he was no longer a prospect. He was the franchise. On July 8, 2010, the Predators named him their 5th captain in franchise history, replacing Jason Arnott, and he became the youngest captain the team had ever had, and the first one they had drafted and developed themselves. By the 2011-12 season, the numbers confirmed what everyone in the building already knew. 19 goals, 49 points in 78 games, finishing 2nd in Norris Trophy voting, and earning first All-Star team honors for the 2nd straight year, all while anchoring the blue line for one of the tightest defensive teams in the league. Nashville built its identity around Shea Weber, and he carried it without complaint. 3 times he was named a Norris Trophy finalist. Twice he finished as runner-up by margins so small they border on cruel. 9 votes behind Lidstrom in 2011. 12 behind Carlson in 2012. 7 All-Star Game selections across his career. And then there was the shot, the one thing everybody talked about, even if they didn't follow the Predators. At the 2015 skills competition, he clocked 108.5 miles per hour, the 2nd fastest shot in the history of the event, trailing only Zdeno Chara's record by 0.3 of a mile per hour. He won the hardest shot competition 4 times, and opposing players talked about blocking his slap shot the way you talk about something you survived. He was playing 25-plus minutes a night against the other team's best forwards, and nobody in the league wanted to be the one standing in the shooting lane when Weber wound up. Nashville thought they had their franchise cornerstone for the next decade. So what happened in the summer of 2012 that changed everything, including how the contract would eventually destroy his body? On July 19, 2012, the Philadelphia Flyers signed Weber to the richest offer sheet in NHL history. 14 years, $110 million. $56 million of that was paid in the first 4 years alone, $14 million per season, front-loaded as aggressively as the rules would allow. At the time, the deal made Weber the holder of the 2nd largest contract in NHL history by total value, behind only Alex Ovechkin's $124 million deal in Washington. The structure was deliberately punishing for a small market team. Nashville had 7 days to match it or lose their captain and receive 4 first-round draft picks as compensation. David Poile, Nashville's general manager, matched the offer on July 24th. Weber stayed, but matching didn't neutralize the problem. It absorbed it entirely, because the structure of the deal was built to exploit the salary cap in ways the league hadn't yet closed off. The money was massive up front and disappeared toward the back end, dropping to $1 million a year in the final 3 seasons, when Weber would be in his late 30s and approaching 40. The whole point was to keep the annual cap hit low while paying the player the bulk of his money early. The NHL responded by introducing the cap recapture rule as part of the 2013 CBA, written in part because of contracts like Weber's, along with deals belonging to Kovalchuk, Luongo, and a handful of others. The rule meant that if Weber retired before his contract expired in 2026, Nashville would owe up to $24.57 million in cumulative dead cap penalties spread across the remaining years, for a player they had already traded. The contract had become a financial instrument with a 14-year fuse, and the longer Weber stayed on the ice, the longer that fuse held. 2 franchises had a structural incentive to keep him playing regardless of what his body was telling him. Nobody designed the system to hurt Shea Weber specifically, but nobody designed it to protect him either. The offer sheet forced Nashville's hands. But what forced the trade 4 years later? And what did Montreal inherit along with his cannon of a shot? By 2016, Nashville was building around a younger, faster core, and Weber's contract made the math complicated. On June 29th of that year, the Predators traded him to Montreal in a 1-for-1 swap for PK Subban that shook both cities. His first season with the Canadiens was productive. 17 goals and 42 points in 78 games, and the transition looked seamless from the outside. What nobody could see yet was that the clock on his body had already started running differently than the clock on his contract. In October 2017, during the opening weeks of the 2017-18 season, Weber blocked a slap shot from Jack Eichel, left foot. He played through it for 26 games before the pain became unmanageable, and in March 2018, he had surgery to repair torn tendons. He was done for the rest of the season. That summer, he had a second surgery, arthroscopic work on his right knee in June. 2 separate procedures on 2 different legs in the span of 3 months during a single offseason, which tells you everything about the accumulated toll on a body that had been absorbing the hardest minutes in hockey for over a decade. He didn't play a game for nearly a full calendar year. When he finally returned on November 27, 2018, the coaching staff limited his ice time to protect him. He played 58 games that season. Then the COVID-shortened 2019-20 season came and went. He looked functional again. He was not recovering. He was managing. And there is a difference between those two things that only becomes visible after the fact. Going into the 2021 playoffs, Weber was carrying a torn meniscus and a broken ankle. During the semifinal series against Vegas, he tore his groin. He played through every single one of those injuries simultaneously, averaging over 23 minutes per game throughout the postseason, while the Canadiens went on a run that took them to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time since 1993. When Eric Engels of Sportsnet reported the full extent of Weber's injuries after the season, Weber's own description of how he managed was 5 words. Just taped it all up. He said he was a mummy. Montreal lost to Tampa Bay in 5 games, and Weber skated off the ice at Amalie Arena on July 7th, 2021, for what nobody in the building knew was the last shift of his career. What makes that run so difficult to watch in hindsight is not that Weber was hurt. Everybody plays hurt in the NHL playoffs. What makes it difficult is that nobody intervened. Not Montreal's medical staff, not the league, not the NHLPA. A player was visibly compromised across 4 separate injuries at the same time, and every institution that could have pulled him chose not to. He played because the culture demanded it, because the cap recapture clock was still running, and because Shea Weber was the kind of player who would never remove himself from a game his teammates needed him in. The system relied on that. Every part of it relied on exactly that. Weber gave the Canadiens the best he had left. So what did the franchise and the league give him in return? After his final game in 2021, Weber never played again. Montreal exposed him in the Seattle expansion draft rather than protecting him because they needed the roster spot for a healthy player. His contract, still technically active, was then traded 3 separate times. Montreal moved it to Vegas in June 2022. Vegas moved it to Arizona in February 2023. And in March 2025, the Utah Hockey Club moved it to Chicago. 3 trades for a player who was never going to lace up again. Each one a transaction designed to shift the weight of a $110 million deal that had outlived the career it was meant to pay for. The contract ran until 2026. Nashville, meanwhile, avoided the full cap recapture penalty through LTIR classification. Weber was never formally retired. He was placed on long-term injured reserve, and the mechanics of the CBA allowed the recapture to be managed through that designation, rather than triggering the worst-case $24.57 million penalty. The system protected the franchise. The system did not protect the player. At his Hall of Fame media availability in November 2024, Weber confirmed something that should sit with anyone who watched him play those final seasons. It was the October 2017 Eichel shot, the one he blocked during the regular season, the one nobody made a big deal about at the time, that ended his career. He knew. He played 4 more seasons after that moment. He had 2 more surgeries. He dragged his body through an entire Stanley Cup playoff run on injuries that should have ended his season before it started. And he knew the entire time that the injury from 2017 was the one that had fundamentally broken him. Even missing a practice for him wasn't an option, Marc Bergevin, Montreal's general manager, said after Weber's career ended. That line belongs to the culture, not just to one general manager. It belongs to every front office that watched a player deteriorate on live television and said nothing. To every broadcast team that called it toughness instead of asking whether anyone had a responsibility to intervene. Weber was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2024, in his first year of eligibility. He's celebrated as a warrior, and he earned that word. But warrior culture in hockey is the mechanism by which the league extracts maximum value from a player's body and then moves the contract 3 times after he's broken. The question is not whether Shea Weber was tough. Everyone who's ever watched him play knows the answer to that. The question is who that toughness actually served, because it wasn't the man who taped himself together like a mummy and played a Stanley Cup final on a body that was finished. Weber's story isn't unusual. It's the template. A player gives everything, the contract outlives the career, and the system moves on. If you want to go deeper on the stories the NHL would rather not revisit, join Healthy Scratch. Priority replies, loyalty badges, exclusive emojis, and early access to videos. Hit that join button. Something's coming next that I've been working on for a while, and I think it might be the best thing we've done on this channel. Subscribe so you're the first one here for it.